SciFi Gangstas.
I kind of begrudgingly respect just the dedication to not getting better at what you do for a living. Just coast through life.
It probably shouldn't even happen.
If you got it, you got to flaunt it, Acid.
You know what? I got a lot of stuff that I don't want to flaunt, and so I just keep it to myself.
Jeremy is really big into the used mattresses. I think that's an excellent deal.
He has a used mattress store on the side.
I'm not going to pull the pants down without the pants down cue.
And we found out that Anthony's friends are all 13-year-old boys. Nice.
Clay, how you doing?
Doing a little more poorly after that terrible introduction. I was just fine, to be honest with you.
Hello, Sci-Fi Gangsters. This is a show where we talk about science fiction, comic books, and video games, but really it's just an excuse for me to catch up with my friends and to meet interesting people. I'm Anthony Nadar, media scholar and person who loves sand, just everything about sand. I like rolling around in the sand and just eating sand, and it's probably a good thing I watched Dune because there's a lot of sand in the movie Dune. That's what we'll be talking about today. We'll talk about the new Dune film directed by Denis. I always pronounce his name incorrectly, so I just do. All right, so really excited about our panelists here, our guests. Starting off with Dr. Maxwell Foxman, assistant professor of media studies and game studies at the University of Oregon. Max, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm pretty excited to be here and talking about Dune, everything Dune.
All right, well, fantastic. Maybe we should kind of do quickly, like your knowledge of Dune. Quick, go.
I'm not necessarily a Dune expert, but I have seen the old Dune and the new Dune in the same day. And then shortly after that, I saw Jodorowsky's Dune, which is about the failed attempt to make Dune in the 1970s. I've read the books, and I'm just generally a fan. I guess I'm giving away my hand there. I thought there were some good things about the new movie. So, yeah.
Well, very good. Excellent. Well, it's great to have you on. Up next, we have Mychal. You've been on the show several times. Mychal, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Unlike you, Anthony, I hate sand. But actually, that might be another sci-fi movie we'll have to talk about later. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm excited to talk about Dune. I am not an expert. Max, you say you're not an expert, but you've done so much. So I've only seen this movie. I know of the David Lynch version. I am desperate to watch it, pretty
it's
much
so worth it.
Once I'm not busy. And I know of Dune. I have watched enough summaries of the book to kind of know and grasp what Dune is about. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Fantastic. And of course, the producer of the show, Acidtrain. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Just hanging in there, ready to do a long bus trip tomorrow, but it's gonna be okay. I'm gonna live.
All right. Well, fantastic. It's definitely good to have you on. But once again, our topic for today is Dune. Did you like it? Did you not like it? We'll be talking about that today. That's our Dune review, right? But first, a couple of things. Don't forget, you can check us out on YouTube. We're also streaming on Twitch as well. We're streaming on Twitch and YouTube. We're moving up in the world, Mychal. Before it was just YouTube. Now we're on Twitch and YouTube, so it will double our views to 2. I'm assuming. So yeah, and then obviously we'll be putting this onto in podcast form. 3 people. That's very good, very good. 3 people. Then we'll be putting this on wherever you get your podcast. You can listen to us in audio form too, so you can listen to us. Maybe you're working out. I don't know what you do in your spare time when you listen to driving, commuting. I don't know what you do. You can definitely check us out in podcast form as well. Like and subscribe and all that kind of good stuff. But the way we start this show off, we always start off by sort of catching up with our friends, right? That's what I do. I'm catching up with my friends here. So I'll go ahead and begin with what's new. So I recently purchased, or I should say my wife purchased, an acupuncture pad. I don't know if you're familiar with this. So it is essentially a pad that you lay down on top of, and it's supposed to emulate the effects of acupuncture. So I actually have, here's the headrest. So for the video listener. So this is literally just like spiky. Like it's not spiky enough to like break your skin, but it's spiky enough to be spiky. Like and you lay down on top of it. And it's supposed to, once again, it's supposed to be sort of like the benefits or the same benefits of acupuncture. And I've tried it out a couple of times, and it's painful. It is a painful experience to sit on this thing. Now, apparently, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to sort of just suffer through like the first couple of minutes, and then it gets better, or your body sort of adapts to it, and it does. But I will tell you, the first 2 minutes are extremely painful, and I'm like, it's almost like, why am I torturing myself here? But I've been doing it a couple of times. I have no idea if I'm getting any sort of benefit from this. Is it one of those things where I associate any sort of pain with like benefit? Oh, if it hurts me, then it has to be, then it has to be helping me. So I've been doing that. So still experimenting with this acupuncture mat thing. I haven't come with a review yet, but very painful. Very, very, very painful experience. So what I'm trying to say is everybody should try it. So you
Okay.
know what it feels like. So that's something that I've been doing recently. Well, go ahead and go on. Yeah, go ahead.
Isn't the key to acupuncture precision? Like, isn't it that you're supposed to get stabbed in very specific places?
See, I feel like you're dissecting the usefulness of this acupuncture pad. I feel like you're pointing out the flaws, and
Okay.
and you might be 100% correct. Like, this may just be a very stupid thing to do. I have
Could
no
also
idea.
be very helpful. I don't know.
It came recommended. It's supposed to help you relax your muscles. It's supposed to, I guess, release endorphins because of the pain. I don't know, but I've been trying it because here's the thing, Michael, you know this. I try to keep my body in peak physical performance, right? I mean, you got to hone this body through. I'm being facetious, of course, but yeah. So that's what I've been doing lately. So we'll go ahead and move on to Max. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I think aside from the joy of organizing last weekend when Dune came out, I was able to rent an entire movie theater here in Eugene, and myself and about 10 other friends were able to watch our double Dune. So that was my most exciting thing from last week, was just having a theater to myself and, post-COVID times, and getting there, getting the popcorn, sitting down, getting that 5 to 6 hours of watching straight. That was very, very long, and also a lot of fun, especially because you got your like first introduction to Dune. I'm sure we'll talk about this later, and then you get like 2 books after that, the David Lynch version. So you get this like beginning again, middle, and end, which I thought was a lot of fun. But only other sort of interesting things happening with me. You'd think as a game studies professor, I'd have tons of time to play video games, and I really, 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 really don't. But I found myself for like the second time ever in my life playing a MOBA, which is just playing Pokemon Unite. I find it refreshing and adorable to play at night. And so I have just been playing that and enjoying actually winning a MOBA every once in a while, which again, I have not done in the history of the genre as far as I know. So yeah, I'd say those are my 2 big things.
Sounds fantastic. It is funny how we sort of justify playing video games because we're studying video games, and like it's like this is for my research. I have to play Madden right now, as my wife yells at me. You're playing it again? Look, I'm not even close to researching Madden. I just enjoy playing Madden every once in a while. But yeah, excellent. Once again, great to have you on, Michael. What's new?
I will just say real quick, Anthony, that's how I felt about binging like all of Squid Game yesterday. So,
Yep.
So not gonna write a paper on it, but you never know unless you watch it. So
The funny thing about Squid Game is last episode we did a review on Squid Game, so we talked about Squid Game in depth, right? And also, I will be. I just announced that I will be coordinating a week on Squid Game for In Media Res. So so if you're interested in writing about Squid Game, you could be part of that week. But yeah, excellent. But what else, Michael?
I might have to see if I can dive into my brain and pull out some Squid Game for you. But yeah, nothing else. This semester is I forget if we can curse or not, but it's kicking my ass, I'll say. And the last time we talked, actually, funny enough, I just got my braces. So acid, I know we talked about it with your daughter, how now braces are fine. My mouth no longer hurts as much. So
you're good.
That's great. And last time we talked about hot men, which, I mean, funny enough, we will again probably, because there is Oscar Isaac. So,
you went with Oscar Isaac. Oh, okay.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, come on.
100%.
The scene where he's sitting there, like, my sister and I just literally turned to each other and we're like, oh, look at this nice plot that's happening here. So, Paul who, really. But anyway.
Interesting.
I'm actually curious if you guys have like kind of Dune names you think your name would like be in the Dune series. I feel like my name already is kind of a weird Dune-esque with the last name Shanks. So like it's like a Christian name of Mychal and then Shanks, which is like a ridiculous last name to have. So I feel like that would be my Dune name. But I'm just curious. You guys can answer this after we're all done talking. So think about it. I'm just curious about if you guys have a Dune name. Because Duncan, Idaho, great.
Yeah.
Then there's Paul. You know, he's doing his thing.
So.
Yeah.
I wonder if you just flip my name around, if it would be Dinar Anthony. I wonder if that would kind of fit as a Dune name.
A Dune-esque name.
Yeah, I feel like that might be the secret to it. Is Foxman Maxwell. That sounds much better.
It does sound like a
that
Dune
I could
name.
come up with. Yeah.
That does sound very Dune.
Or Stallion Dinar. How about that?
Yeah, Stallion, my old radio nickname, Stallion. Old radio name that I gave myself because I thought it was cool. But yeah, excellent. Mychal, where are you at in your semester? Like, where are you in the process? Have you started studying for comps? Where are you at?
You know, I'm just vibing at this point.
Okay, I like it.
I'm done with classwork, so I am supposed to be doing comps. But you know, as everyone probably has felt, this pandemic has really sucked. Like, I am kind of taking it easy right now, and just trying to, like, you know, rest up as much as you can in grad school before I have to either do more or whatever I do. So yeah.
I've always said it, and I'll say it again. Studying for comps was the most enjoyable part of my whole graduate program. Studying for comps was the most enjoyable process. Taking comps was one of the most grueling. It was the most grueling 4 days in the whole time in college. Like just so grueling. But once again, studying for comps, that was fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
All right, Asa, we'll go ahead and move on to you. What's new?
Oh, man. Well, like I said, we got the field trip coming up tomorrow, taking the marching band to Carrollton, Georgia for the day and the night, and some of the next day, I guess, is when we'll be back. So I'm not expecting.
March there?
What's that? Yeah.
They can't march there?
I mean, honestly, it would probably take just as long. So it's ridiculous. Like, and it's so funny because, like, tonight they have a football game that they're at, like, probably right now, and they're, you know, and of course, I mean, it's here, so I mean, they didn't have an away game or anything, but I mean, they're performing tonight. They probably won't be done till 10:30 tonight before they even get home, and probably after that before they get home. And then tomorrow they've got to be up at the school we're leaving, I think, at 10 a.m. tomorrow, so. I mean, they've got to be up at the school probably around 9-ish just to get ready and loaded and all that good stuff. So they're crazy. I don't know what's going on. I hope they win. I do. I really do. I
think that high school game is supposed to be a pretty big deal, right? That's why there's so much traffic, because the Auburn game, and then you got the Auburn high school game going on this weekend.
Oh my gosh, traffic was so stupid today.
Traffic's horrible.
It was awful, but we made it through, and I wasn't too late this afternoon, so it wasn't too bad. Some other big news in the school front. Well, actually, a couple of things. First, I guess the first minor thing, if you want to consider this minor, is the masks are coming off on Monday.
Oh wow!
Interesting.
They are. Well, they're not technically coming off. They are becoming optional.
Ah.
So You can still wear them if you want to, but if I had to guess, living where we live, a lot of masks will be coming off, which is fine. I mean, they've still got to wear them on the bus, which is fine. So because they're in that enclosed, space or whatever. So the bus drivers will be the most protected of all the educator employees. So that's nice. And then the second, which is the big news, was the executive order that was written back in September. If you do not have your fully vaccinated self by December the 8th or 9th or whenever it was, you don't work for us anymore, which is kind of crazy. We're already short-staffed as it is. This is probably going to wipe out about half of what we have right now, which is sad.
Will it, or will people just shape up and get the vaccine?
I don't know if you've all heard of what's happening in New York. They're expecting that firefighters, policemen, a lot of the major service workers, about a fifth of them are not going to be. They're going to be furloughed because they did not sign up for their vaccines, and I think that's starting this week or next week. So similar timeline. That's why I thought of it, Adam.
Yeah, we have. Well, I mean, we've got several people that have had it, including myself. And the issue is the bus lot in itself. I'm one of the youngest people there. So you've got kind of the older gap. And then, of course, I mean, some of it you have the political gap, and then the others are just scared of it. I mean, you've got the fear and stuff going on. I mean, yesterday I got my flu shot. So it was funny because there was a couple of guys, some of the old timers is what I call them. Some of the old timers like, you better not get your flu shot this year because it's got the COVID in it, And I mean, it's just ridiculous, and they'll believe anything that they're told. And that's why they won't get it. And I'm like, dude, I got it. I'm fine. Trust me, it's okay. You're gonna be fine. I probably would not lead you astray. And then you have those, which that makes up about 30% of where I work. So I don't know what the numbers are going to look like this time next in January, I guess. But I really hope that things work out and we're not super. I mean, we're already shorthanded. I mean, there's a national bus driver shortage. Period.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're having to double up and triple up routes and that kind of stuff, and it's hard. It's rough. We've been working our tails off. But yeah, I mean, what can you do? I mean, I don't know what else to do except pray for these people. So, but yeah, so that's what's going on. Let's depress everyone and talk about Dune, right?
Way to bring us all down, Acid. We want to talk about Dune.
As we stare at the dunes.
I did. Oh, I will say this to bring up the mood. Last Sunday we had our trunk or treat, which you were there, Anthony.
Great name.
Apparently you didn't seek me out, which was unfortunate.
Were you at Cornerstone?
Yeah. We had two trunks.
I have
two.
I have no idea how I didn't see you.
Two. And we were right,
I have no idea.
there in front. Yeah, but anyway, so my wife had a booth where we did the duck pond, where you put the number on the bottom of the duck and you flip it over, and that's the barrel you get to pick your treat from. And then I did the old fishing thing where you throw over the chip clip and you clip some treat on the end and it gets hurled to the other side. And I had a shark costume, and it was fun. We had a good time. So there you go. That'll lift your spirits a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about every year. Our neighborhood is pretty big with trick-or-treaters. Everyone comes to our neighborhood to trick-or-treat. Oh, wow. And yes, I will be wearing my full Venom cosplay.
Oh, Lord.
I will be doing that, handing out candy to scare all the little kids.
I think you should be Venom in a bath towel.
Venom in a bath towel.
Show that CrossFit bod.
Sometimes you gotta look, Mychal. Sometimes you gotta show off the CrossFit bod, right? Once again, I want to be.
Don't make his head any bigger, Mychal. Okay.
Physical.
It's big enough. It's just
physical.
It's getting huge.
Well, that'll be very appropriate for the Venom mask.
There you go. Just put the whole thing. Yeah.
That's true.
So, which mask are you going to go with?
I see one in the background.
With the normal. So The half Venom
Yes.
mask. I probably won't go with half Venom mask.
Okay.
I'll probably go with the
Full.
there.
That one?
See that one
Okay.
right there? Yeah, I'll probably go with that one.
Hmm.
All right.
He's actually
well, thank-
Venom by night and
I am
Professor
Venom by
day.
night.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and get our topic for today. So today we're talking about Dune. The way we'll sort of
Dune.
organize this is we'll each pick one thing that we want to talk about the film, and everyone else can kind of chime in if you want to, or
I will
or
let
not
y'all
want
do
to.
this. I will go production mode and let y'all duke it out because I haven't seen it yet. So
I'm just curious.
I will
and
be
I'm
here,
a
though.
little, I'm a little
I will
afraid
be
to
here.
ask this, but is anyone commenting on anything on Twitch or on YouTube? Any
we
comments?
have Jedi Lou on Twitch.
Oh, yeah, Lewis.
Yeah.
Hello,
very
Lewis, how you doing?
excited. Says yay podcast. That's what I got so far from Lou.
Fantastic. Thank you,
Yeah.
Lewis, for the one view.
It's very exciting stuff.
Excellent.
So
So let's go ahead and
let
we'll
y'all take it away.
yeah, we'll talk about Dune here. So he's quite literally turning off his camera. Okay.
I've got the logo over my face, so it's not.
Oh, okay. So on your
yeah.
on the actual. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I'll go ahead and begin. And the one thing, so I've written 3 papers on Denis Villeneuve movies. So I've written 2 papers on Blade Runner 2049. I've written 1 on Arrival. So I'm actually kind of a big fan of this director, although I can't pronounce his name apparently. And the one thing that's pretty consistent with all his films, and a lot of it has to do with his relationship with Hans Zimmer, or just the fact that Hans Zimmer does everything now, is the soundscape. I really did. I really love the soundscape. Now it's not as impressive as Blade Runner 2049, although some may say that Blade Runner 2049 is too bombastic, and I totally understand that. In fact, there was a review who called it a noisescape. That's what he called it. And it's sort of the point, right? It's sort of the point that it's supposed to be noisy. Anyways, but probably not as impressive as that. But I definitely loved all the sound. I loved the music. I loved the sound effects, especially when it has when you're dealing with the shielding and the various weapons. I love all the sound, the music as well. Although I will say this, I think it's about time that every sound director retired the Arab screaming as sort of like an indicator of otherness, right? So it's like, oh, it's an alien world, so we'll have Arab screaming in the background, you know. It's about time. It's not prominent. It's not like Wonder Woman, right? It's not like that. But it's not as prominent as that. But I think it's about time we retire that, right? But other than that, I definitely enjoyed a lot of it. I especially like the sort of what's the way to describe it, the aborigine, like that whole business. That was kind of fun. I liked how that particular the warrior race, not the warrior race, but the warriors, how that for whatever reason they talk with like super baritone. Like what's that about? I'm sort of, Max, I'm sure you know the reasoning for that. I don't know, maybe not. I don't.
I do not. I do you mean the Fremen, or do you mean just soldiers in general?
The Imperial soldiers. Remember how the one commander, when he talks, he has like that super metallic baritone voice. Like there's something that it's definitely augmented.
You mean, wait, the Imperial soldiers or the Harkonnens? This
the
is where
soldiers, the Imperial soldiers.
Oh yeah, the Sardaukar.
Yes, exactly. Like the leader of he's talking to that general or leader or whatever, and he has this like augmented baritone voice for some reason. But
Chat
I
saying
loved
like it did in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. And I think that like they're just supposed to be some sort of enhanced fighter class, sort of, more than anything else. But you got me in terms of the baritone. I was thinking about how much I liked like the sounds of the ornithopters and things like that. You know, like the machines and the wind and like all of these sort of like for all the stereotypes of that sound. Like there's so much good desert sound. In so many of the scenes, like rushing winds and things like going against the winds and the rumbling of like the sandworms and things like that, that like was very like impactful for me, at least.
Yeah, like the rumbling sound of the sandworms, like the shaking sound was fantastic. I really like if you remember when they're being sort of attacked, right? And they have the special missile that goes slowly to get through the shield.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And it kind of is doing this like wham, like that thing. That was pretty cool. I liked all the sort of the slicing and everything. There's just so much great sound in the film, and it's pretty consistent with with any sort of Hans Zimmer like soundtrack. But also, I think that I like how to do with the director as well. But yeah, that's my number one.
So probably what will be my theme for this entire podcast and show is going to be, but in this other Dune, but in the attempt at Jodorowsky's Dune, when he was putting together the concept, he actually wanted each planet to have their own soundtrack, and he Jodorowsky convinced Pink Floyd to be the Atreides, and then I think it was this French like proto punk band. I think they're called like the Magas or something like that. That was going to be the Harkonnens, and he basically just sort of convinced it. So when you're mentioning the sound, it's really interesting because every single one of these movies has very different soundscapes, and the imagined soundscape of just imagine the movie that you saw, but every time that you saw like the Atreides, you had a Pink Floyd soundtrack in the background. That was roughly what that was going to to be.
Almost kind of like how the Klingons have their own theme music every time like Worf shows up on the screen. For whatever reason, it has like a Klingon sound. Yeah. By the way, if we're talking about soundtracks, my favorite thing about the 1984 film Dune, right? My favorite thing is the end credits song.
Oh,
like
yes.
The 80s, like
it's
a
Toto,
soap
right?
opera. Yeah. It is the weirdest thing, but it's also like I unironically love it in a lot of ways. But yeah, I thought I would mention that as well. All right, Max, we'll go ahead and get to your first thing you want to talk about.
Sure. So a lot of my research has to do with virtual reality and like sort of the moment when VR started becoming commercially available, starting in 2016, and sort of the disjunctures and continuations of that. So when I was thinking about Dune in my own sort of life and things that I've been following over the last however many years, I just got really sort of wrapped up in this idea of the virtual idea of Dune, which many thought couldn't really be made into a long epic movie. And then this new Dune, which very much is looking like, especially if it's in multiple parts, which it sounds like it will be, going to sort of meet that reality. And where there are successes and where there are failures and where things will never live up to fan expectation and where they might not. So I mentioned this already, but I saw Jodorowsky's Dune last night about this kind of like it's a virtual Dune in that Jodorowsky gets the comic artist Mobius to do all of the visuals for this movie that never came into being. He convinces all these people from Salvador Dali to Orson Welles to anyone to Mick Jagger to be in this movie. He gets young folks like Geiger, who would go on to do all the design for Alien. He sort of finds Geiger, and Geiger does all of the designs for the Harkonnens, for instance. But the movie never comes into being. And it struck me that a lot of people see Jodorowsky's Dune as this kind of like thing on a hill that had all these magical elements. And the thing that I loved seeing this documentary about it was like the colors. Like Jodorowsky had this incredible rainbow color palette. So you just like these beautiful ships that looked like fish moving through this space and all this other crazy stuff. And I was watching this after seeing the new movie and thinking to myself, man, the new movie is so much going for it, but it is very kind of monochromatic.
It's so funny that you brought that up, and I didn't know if this was just me, but I agree with you. It's very bland, in a lot of ways, and I don't know if it's intentional. Like I don't know if it's like, like more practically speaking, if you lived on a desert planet, you probably wouldn't want to have bright colors, right? Because you want to be able to blend in with like the sand. but you're right. Like it's not very creative. It's very generic. Like it's very like your standard. Like they're gonna wear like a bland wetsuit, right? And they're all kind of wearing the same thing, like
Black.
the
Yeah, the
variations.
Black still suit, basically. Yeah. And like, so that's the thing, is that like this for me is the perfect example of what I was sort of thinking about, which is on the one hand, you know, the new Dune comes in this long tradition of we're going to go to another galaxy. You know, let's start with Star Wars maybe and go up to now, and like all these desert planets that are very bare and harsh. And like you think about like the Star Wars spaceships, and you know they're not particularly colorful either, because they're either rebels and they've been blown up or they're the Imperial Guard, and you know, or the Empire, and they're all gray. And so in some ways it felt a lot like that. But then at the same time, I think you're right. It's all about these kind of practicalities of being in the desert. And I as I said with the sound, one of the things that I loved about the movie, both visually and sonically, was just the harshness of the desert. Like the scenes, the night attack scene, and these gigantic ships, you know, covered in dust. For me, those were like the most memorable parts of the movie. And that has to be monochromatic. Like, what would be the point of having it with lush colors? And so that just, you know, it's, and same thing with those characters, right? Like the Fremen in their suits, they're meant to blend into the desert. That's a big thing of what they do. That's how they survive. So it would make no sense if they were, you know, in this lush, colorful world. But that's the difference between a virtual and a reality, I guess, is when you know, have to make this movie into this big epic. Now we have to recognize some of these very simple practicalities.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I also think that like Denis himself has like very monochromatic films. Like if you think of Prisoner, pretty much the only one I think that would be more colorful is like Blade Runner. But even like Arrival, like they're all just very like beautifully shot, but very like just not like I'm just not very stand out with color. So
well, if I recall, Blade Runner also has like a lot of these kind of monochromatic reds and things like that sort of cast throughout different scenes. But it's been a while since I saw that Blade Runner. But yeah.
I say the more colorful aspect of Blade Runner has more to do with the city itself and the projections of the advertisements and that sort of thing. But other than that, you're right. There's not a lot of, I guess you could say, I don't want to say creativity, but it's definitely not what you would typically associate with like a science fiction, you know, like the contrast and colors and that sort of thing. But yeah. All right, Mychal, what do you want to talk about?
Oh man. I guess when you were talking about sound, it just reminded me of like, I mean, the only sound I truly remember is the like, hey, there's brown people here sound you were talking about, with like the like very much like Arab, like, you know, like even like North African sounds and like howls that happen, which is like the funny thing about this film, where like I'm very like, I love TikTok, so like people on TikTok are going wild that they assume Zendaya would be in this more than she is, and like she's technically only in it for like 7 minutes, like which actually I'm curious because Max, it sounded like you also had this like kind of vibe, but going into the movie, I didn't know it was going to be parts. Like
not at all.
Yeah, like I was shocked. And it's funny because like my friends, when we went to go see like the first Hobbit, they didn't realize it was a trilogy. So when the movie ended, like that's how I feel now. I understand their feeling of being like as soon as my sister and I saw like Dune Part 1, we're like, wait, what? Like so like which I think
what makes it even worse, Mychal, what makes it even worse is that they didn't even greenlight the second film. Like, so like with Lord of the Rings, like he made all three films at the same time.
Yeah.
So they released year after year. This one, we have to wait like 2 or 3 years before we even see it. Yeah.
Well, and that's the funny thing about Zendaya. Like it follows the books very, in my opinion, it really does follow the books in a lot of ways. And just for the first third to half of that book, you know, Zendaya's character really isn't in it all that much beyond being a vision. And there's only so many times you can show a vision of someone like walking in the desert. You know?
Like there she is again. Like
We get it. You're standing there and you're looking at Paul in the dream. Yes. Okay. Move on.
yeah, so that's even wilder. Like that because I was talking to my dad today about it because we both want to watch the David Lynch version, but he somewhat doesn't want spoilers. But we were joking and be like, well, if it's not going to come out for another few years, then he'll forget it by then. So like we'll just be able to like watch the new one. But yeah, that's not really the first thing I want to talk about, but we could talk about the whole parts situation because it's a long movie to begin with. And then also now that whole situation, I didn't even know about the like media industry side where they're like not even greenlit for it. Because I heard that they were like really like, oh, this has to do well so we can get a part 2. And I was like, wait, what? Like, how did you already not get that?
Yeah, I don't understand that. And obviously it complicates things with the fact that they released it on HBO Max. So did that make it even more riskier that they wouldn't greenlight the second one? Or was it one of those situations where, hey, look, if we have a lot of people watch on HBO Max, then we're happy? Like, is it one of those situations?
My understanding is that the release in HBO Max was considered problematic by a lot of the filmmakers themselves, and that is not something that HBO plans on continuing to do sort of in the post-pandemic moment. I could be wrong, but like they only did it right for 2021, and I don't think they've announced anything for 2022, and they didn't technically do it for 2020. So I think it was a moment in time, and they saw it as a loss, right?
Yeah, I didn't know if they used the sort of like the metrics of how many people are watching on HBO as Max as a way of saying, hey, look, this does have legs, so to speak.
Yeah,
I know it did well in the box office, which is the main reason why it's been greenlit, which is exciting, but also sort of nuts. Yeah.
It's definitely good news because I definitely want to see. I would definitely want to see more. All right.
And do we know if it's going to be 2 parts or 3 parts? I keep getting into conversations with my wife about this. I'm seeing online that it could potentially be 3 parts.
I can see it being 3 parts. I mean, just because it makes sense to do a trilogy because you're going to make the most money, right? That's you got a lot of stars like Timothy Chalamet, right? That hunk. I don't care what you say, Mychal. He's a hunk.
Timothy.
So
he's definitely something.
The original serial of the publication of Dune was done in 3 books. Dune, which was the Dune novel. Then the second serial was divided into book 2, Muad'Dib, and book 3, The Prophet. So I don't know what that speaks to. That could mean even more movies theoretically based on
that. It could be. Yeah, it could be like a Hobbit situation where you just you break up one book into 3 books or 3 movies.
But you have to make one book that's just a glossary.
All right, so Mychal, did you want to continue with that? Or do you want to save it for your next point?
No, we can move on to your next points because my next point is about race. So we're gonna get
okay. Yeah, we'll say that. Yeah. By the way, Mychal, if you want problematic, then David Lynch, get ready for the homophobia in David Lynch, because that film is one of the most homophobic films that I've seen. So get ready for that business. All right, so good.
How?
Yeah. All right. So good. Let's go ahead and get to my second one. And I'll say my second one's going to be the performances. I thought the performances all around were fantastic. As someone who has not seen a Timothy Chalamet film before, I was impressed. I feel like he is a talented actor. I definitely could have seen him go like the brooding teen way, and he doesn't do that. Like I feel like he doesn't. He kind of plays with this character in a way that's not annoying, because I was expecting him to be annoying and he wasn't. So I definitely enjoyed his performance. I thought other performances were great as well. I really like Jason Momoa's character. I just like Jason Momoa. Once again, Jason Momoa. There's me and Jason Momoa right there. Can you see it? Am I pointed to her? They're me and Jason Momoa.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Hanging out there. Once again, good friend of mine, Jason Momoa. And by good friend, I mean I took a picture with him once. So I liked his character, his performance. I thought performances all around were fantastic. I enjoyed sort of, this kind of ties into the soundscape a little bit, but I enjoyed whenever they do use like the persuasive voice, how it like they changed the tone. That really was really cool. I like the way they did that. And when they first introduced it, I thought it was cool to sort of do the delay, like where he would say something, there would be a delay, and then you would hear it. I thought that was fantastic. That was a great choice. So all around, I would say the performances were fantastic. I was really impressed. I didn't feel like there was a bad performance. And when you compare it to the 1984 version, you're kind of like, well, yeah, but yeah. So yeah, that's what I was saying.
And I thought it was interesting. Like, I hadn't seen the 1984 version before seeing the new one. That was the way that we saw Dune that day, was new one, then 1984 version.
Really?
Oh yeah, we went backwards because the idea was we thought that we needed to sort of give our full attention to the new one. You know, that was going to be the serious one, and then we all knew that there were certain goofy qualities, at least, to the David Lynch movie. But it was interesting that both had the voices done very similarly. I thought the whispers, which I thought was pretty interesting. I thought Chalamet was great. I had a slightly different take on him, but again, it's maybe informed by my remembering of the book. I found him sort of nicely petulant. Like, I thought it was well acted, but you know, Paul's early character, when he's sort of like figuring out what he's doing and before he sort of goes out with the Fremen, is very much like a cloistered, slightly petulant figure. I mean, here he is getting picked up from his home, moved to this place that clearly is not, you know, his like anything close to his native land. And he's sort of like, he's sort of annoyed about it, but also sort of entitled about it. And I love that. Again, comparing it to Kyle MacLachlan's version, I mean, it's very much night and day. Nothing against MacLachlan's hair in the movie, but that's a separate issue. And then I will say there are certain soft spots I have for the 84 acting. Like, you know, Patrick Stewart will always be a wonderful Gurney help.
Where's me and Patrick Stewart? All right, so there's an autograph. So there's an autograph.
Oh, is that?
So that's Patrick Stewart. Autograph picture of Patrick.
Excellent.
But you're gonna have
so Patrick Stewart
cast soon, Anthony. Like,
and
Patrick Stewart is my favorite actor of all time. So I 100% agree with you on that one.
And maybe you know this as a Patrick Stewart fan. What I heard, and I could be wrong, is that it was actually the lack of success of Dune that made him available for the next generation. That he basically had, you know, he had expected that to be his Star Wars, and then when it didn't happen, yeah. So we really have David Lynch to thank for
that's
for
true.
Next
We
generation,
definitely do have
right?
we have David Lynch to thank for that. Yeah, so all I would say mine is I definitely enjoyed the performances all around. Yeah. So Max, we'll go ahead and go to you. What's your second one you want to talk about?
Oh, so my second one we've sort of touched on a bit. Sort of going a little bit on the VR train a tiny bit more. I don't have a full VR slate of things to talk about, but at least one other, which is I was thinking a little bit about altered states, which of course is the, you know, a major theme of Dune. The idea that spice is from the beginning, melange from the beginning, is supposed to induce a hallucinogenic experience. You don't really get a sense of it in the movie, not yet. You get little bits and pieces of it, but I guess I'm sort of like I had such mixed feelings about the altered states of this movie. On the one hand, they did feel realistic, you know, this kind of, you know, out of body experience, not too hallucinogenic, not too crazy, definitely fulfilling some of the more prophetic roles of Paul. By the same token, it slowed down the movie for me a bit. I mean, I have to say that the visions of Zendaya, which I know aren't quite the same thing, dreams aren't the same thing as spice-induced altered states, but I'm going to lump them together for the sake of this argument. But like, I wanted fewer dreams of Zendaya as much as I wanted Zendaya in it. By the third time, I just got so frustrated. And there's only so many times you could see someone glittering in the sun. So my one, the thing I've been telling my friends is like, there's so much I enjoyed about the movie. It could have been like a half hour shorter. And if I was going to take anything from anywhere, it would be the altered states, which is to say that maybe in the next movie that will be rectified. I mean, that's where it's really going to matter. But yeah, I found the altered states were at once seemingly realistic, and on the other hand, I don't know how much I needed them. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, you can sort of chime in on what you're saying there. One of the things that I sort of, as someone who has never read the books before and sort of done a little bit of research on the side, watching YouTube stuff like that. One of the things that fascinates me about the lore of Dune is the idea of human evolution and sort of like the rejection of computers, right? Because that's what kind of the Dune universe is set on, this idea of we're not going to use computers anymore. So we need to evolve ourselves. And I really I like that aspect of it. So that it kind of hints to this in various ways. Though a couple of hints where the doctor is sort of checking someone's vitals simply by touching them, which is interesting to me because, like, okay, is this more of like a sort of like an Eastern medicine thing going on here? Are they alluding to, or is this more of like there's some sort of, at the time I thought, well, maybe there was some sort of technology that was just implanted in him, but I'm guessing based on Dune canon that's not the case. It's someone who's just evolved to be able to check someone's vitals just by touching them. And then another one where it sort of alludes to that is when that one character, his eyes roll up because he's calculating and he's constantly communicating with other people with a device in his throat. So I'm curious what you guys thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, I think that maybe the theme of that dovetails off of what you're describing is the kind of idea of like human intervention versus natural intervention. Like there's probably some interesting things that we could talk about in terms of kind of the environment and how we should or should not embrace it. Because I would say that so many of the examples of what you're describing, like that computer guy, the Mentats are these kind of like pinnacles of human computer intervention. Paul himself is the subject of human intervention in terms of evolution, right? Like he's supposed to be bred to be something. And then it's interesting how there is this kind of like pivot point where he and others seem to need to have Arrakis's natural environment in order to get something that is beyond that, right? Like it's only when he decides I'm going to be part of Arrakis and inside, let the world and quite literally the atmosphere in the form of spice, melange, like come into me, that I reach my true potential or what have you, So there's this dichotomy, because I also think that like there's obviously critiques on either side of that, but that is an arc of Paul's story.
Yeah. Real quick, Max. It's like the book, I think I've heard, isn't there like kind of like this allegory of like environmentalism within the book, or am I just okay?
Yeah. No, and I think again, it's been a couple years since I read it, but the big thing that's emphasized in the book, which maybe is sort of I think it was pretty true to the book, but like the whole idea of like both the Mentats, the Harkonnens, these are all different. These are all examples of like truly kind of computers taken to the point of biology, right? That's why the Mentats are human computers. Baron Harkonnen, he is so large, but he can float because he has these like stabilizers, anti-gravity stabilizers that bring around. That's why he has that scene where he rises up. But like, And I always think that's interesting because the big thing is Paul himself is really, if I recall, when the Bene Gesserit priests are discussing him, he is supposed to be something that was completely planned, right? Like he was conceived, quite literally conceived through a kind of genetic manipulation. So also some weird eugenicsy things going on in there too. But then he goes from there to like the planet, and the planet completely is what he embraces, right? Like sheds that for that natural environment.
Yeah, fantastic. Excellent. All right, Mychal, we'll go ahead and get to you. What's your second one?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of piggybacks off of what you're saying with performance, which I also think that everyone in this film did like an amazing job. And something just really quick to interject about like the voice pitching that I thought was really cool. And I don't know if they made this intentional or not, but because of the Ben Gesserit like being women, when the mom tells Paul to like heighten his pitch, I thought that might have been because of like this like kind of like he needed a more like higher pitch, more feminine kind of like voice to like be able to control this voice, since these women are the ones who mostly like, that's a whole other issue. But like, you know, like I thought it was interesting if that was something that they were trying to do with like, you know, gender and like playing with that for like a brief moment in this film. But like the main thing I think I would love to critique is just like the, you know, just the desert race, everything about that. Like, you know, obviously we have like this white savior and his mother going in to eventually like free these brown people. And yeah, I think it's just like an interesting story because like as someone who really like talks about representation in my like scholarship, like this idea of like do we all need this like representation? Like do we need like Zendaya in the like you know in the desert like to be like, oh look, a brown face? Or like, not to say that this role should go to other people, but like it's just interesting where we choose to stick people and represent people versus like where we like don't. So like, you know, obviously, because I mean, even things that have been written with like explicitly in books, like, oh, this is like a white person, has been like, you know, race bent with like, you know, Will Smith and I Am Legend being like a big one. So like, it's just interesting how it's like, oh, we still have like, you know, Timothée Chalamet being skinny and white and like, you know, but like he is going to be embraced by these brown people, which I think is very funny, especially with Timothy, because there are a lot of like videos on the internet, if you look around, of him in high school doing things that are definitely like in Black culture, like he'll be rapping or like doing hip hop dances. So I think it's very interesting, like him as a person playing this role, even though I think he did great in it. Like it's just like that kind of cross of like media representation and like the people who are actually playing these, like who are the workers in this, is like a really interesting dynamic that who knows, maybe I'll write a paper on, but you know, one of my many papers I probably should be writing. But yeah, I'm just curious about your guys' thoughts real quick on this.
Yeah, this was something. Yeah, when I watched this film, I was looking for this because I have written about this particular director's representation of gender in particular, because some of his representation of gender
please say more about this.
can be pretty problematic, right? I mean, we can kind of get into a lot of it, but so I was kind of looking for this, and one thing I noticed is that there's like an attempt, for, because you could very easily have said these are white people and these are these kind of people and these are these kind of people. You definitely could have gone that way. And it seems like he was pretty deliberate about sort of mixing it up in a way that he did, right? So I definitely understand. Yeah, I definitely see what you're talking about here. The original Dune is way worse in terms of the white savior mentality, because from what I understand about the book, and I haven't read the book, once again, I heard this, is that the book is sort of like him set up as the savior is a deception. Is that correct, Max?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, so like in the film, in the 1984 film, like that's not. It's like he's just a white savior dude. But in the actual books, it's a huge deception.
Yeah, and his expectations of himself are dashed, which is an interesting part of the books as well, right? Like, so it's part of him also believing himself to be a white savior, and not and his own disappointment about that potential. So I think that's interesting. Sorry, Anthony, I don't know if I tread over what you're saying there. Oh, I was just going to add, you know, my thought is, you know, sort of on that note, I had really mixed feelings about exactly what you're describing, but also I think I'm giving a lot of benefit of the doubt of this part two, right? Because the first half of the book and the first half of this movie, at least, are all about colonialism. I mean, it's colonialism and like it talk about strange timing. I mean, this was not HBO's plan, but like with the exit of Afghanistan and thinking about the generations of colonial, powers that have been, brought into and out of Afghanistan because of, so many reasons, and the sort of the culture that's the cultural differences that exist there. I actually found some of that resonant, but it sort of is resonant based on what happens next, right? Like we've seen one colonial power leave, another colonial power come in. We've seen people fighting over land while, the people of that land have no agency or seemingly no agency. Now, if something happens that is sort of critical of that system, that would be great. I don't, despite what you're describing, Anthony, in the book, I still think that, Frank Herbert was writing a long time ago, and his understanding of colonial powers might not live up to today's standards. So there's a lot riding on now. How do we interpret this, right? And I agree with you. The end of the '84 movie is about as savory as a human being can get, or as a movie can get. It'll be really interesting to see where it goes.
Okay, I will hold my reservations until I see part two. But I think something that's interesting with this first part, and something I've been wanting to talk about, like just in general with my scholarship, but have not had the time yet. But like, I think it's just really interesting, as you're talking about, Anthony, with like the diversity within the movie and who is able to be close to that diversity. Because Oscar Isaac, I think, is like this weirdly like interesting case study of him being a person of color, but being so intrinsically linked to whiteness and almost seen as white that like even like, like his child should be mixed, like like he should be mixed, like, and yet we have Timothy Chalamet, who is like very white. And so it's like very interesting, even like with his presence, how it can be so quickly erased his like own like person of color like experience. And even that way feels a little bit, even with Jason Momoa, which I mean, and then I'm trying to think of who else is in that movie that I can think of. But even like the advisor he has, who I can't remember the actor's name, but he's like a very famous like black like like actor. The one who like eyes went back, who was like talking to him a lot. And so like, again, like who is like what people of color are surrounding these like, colonial powers is also like very interesting when thinking about it. And so I really hope Denis like maybe get somebody to help him if like the second part to really like process that. I also don't have high hopes because I mean I can't even think of any people of color in a previous film of his, like really. So it'll be interesting. And even I think I have a paper on Zendaya and her also like kind of intersection of where she fits in with like her being light skinned and like her closeness to whiteness as well. So I think it'll be really interesting to see this project hopefully move forward, maybe for one more, maybe two. We'll see what happens. But like, where this goes and like the issues of race around it will be interesting to see. So I'm excited, hesitant, but excited. So
yeah, I definitely think there's I understand your concern about where this could potentially go, right?
You can, white man. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah. I know, right? I know. I'm woke. I know what I'm talking about, right? All right, very good. All right, so let's go ahead and get to our next one. Acid, I don't know if you're still there, but are we getting any sort of comments
I am
or
still
anything?
here. Yes.
Okay.
No.
Very good.
The last comment I got was actually at the beginning of the show. I don't want to interrupt or anything, but we did have an opinion. Most boring movie since COVID.
All right.
2.5 hours of exposition with zero pacing.
Wow, interesting. A hard take
Wow.
on that. Who was that said that?
Some Goner is the name. So we
Oh,
got.
wow.
So yeah.
Well, there you go.
Also said yes. I didn't care for the Arabic either. So there you go.
There we go.
There you have it.
Fantastic. All right, so we'll get to my last one here. And the one thing that I definitely enjoyed about this film is I like the weaponry. I thought that was kind of interesting, particularly with the shield. So I wasn't aware of this. So when I did research, I found out that why swords are so prominent, right? And it has everything to do with the shielding, right? So the shields reflect any sort of like laser weapon. So the only way to get through the shield is you have to slice someone in a particular way. So if you slice it slowly, it goes through the shield. So any sort of like forceful attack on the shield, it gets deflected. But if you are able to like slowly get in there, that's why they have the screw bullets and that sort of thing, and like the sort of a slicing that will get through the shield. So when I knew that, I went back and watched the movie again, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I get sort of like the cool justification of why, like, we want to see some cool sword fights, but you have to justify why there are sword fights. And the way you do that is saying, there's a particular technology that you can't fire laser weapons, and you have to have these other kind of ways of getting to the shield. So I thought it was, I really enjoyed that. I kind of already mentioned the sort of like the bombs that had to screw through the shield to get to the down there. I thought that was really cool. Sort of like all the sword fights and the slicing and everything, I thought was also very cool as well. So I'll say the weaponry would be my number one.
And no feelings about it having a little bit of a video gamey feel, where it's like when you finally kill them, it's red. That was the only thing that came to my mind outside of it. But then again, I saw the David Lynch one, where again, if you want some comparisons between things, those wonderful reflective blocks. Now that's the pinnacle of high technology. No, that was I thought the shields were very cool, and sort of like building off of what you're saying, I loved, and this also gets to what Asa was saying. The pacing of the movie has its issues, but also like did a really good job in world building, in the sense that I loved the ornithopters. I thought they were the coolest thing. I don't know why. I can't quite explain it, but just the ornithopters and the flapping wings and how it sounded. For me, that was just lovely. And like the way they moved, the diving, when they kept turning off the ornithopters and then would dive and then come back up. That's where my, like, I don't know, maybe that's just, someone who grew up on Star Wars. I just like seeing different ships, but for me, that was just lovely. So, in the analogy, you to swords is me to ornithopters.
Yeah, I definitely. So there's a lot of cool technology in the film, including sort of like the recycled suits where you could sort of drink your own sweat and your own, I'm assuming, poop.
Didn't they say that outright? I think they did.
I don't know if they said that. I've heard all kinds of jokes online about recycling. I mean, they have that one scene where everyone's spitting into that recycling thing, right? They kind of have that, but I think but yeah, it's sort of like, but the suits is cool. The little device that sort of like controls the sand, which was pretty cool as well. Just a lot of cool technology in this particular film. All right, Max, we'll get to your last one. What do you have?
I have so many things. Now that we started talking, I could just keep going. I think that the last thing that I want to talk about is just thinking about resources. I thought that was a really interesting. The issue of resources in the movie is going with the still suits is super consistent, but also I don't know, thinking about climate change issues and things like that. I don't it seemed to hit home a little bit more than maybe when I was a kid and first picked up the book. Just thinking about a planet where they're so dependent on on whatever's available, and obviously the visual metaphor of the mouse, which was, we haven't talked about yet, but that mouse was a kind of nice little playful feature throughout the movie. So I thought it did a pretty good job. I've already said, of the things that I really liked in the movie were sort of the ships and the environment and the world that was created. I thought that the characters didn't really develop over time, which would probably be my critique. Well acted, but you don't get a lot of change from point one to point A to point B, maybe point C, to everything we've been saying. But it's something to think about in a time where we are all having to think more and more about our own resources in the world. This is a good movie to have that as a metaphor, I guess, or to have it as an important metaphor.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Max, because as someone who lives in Southern California, so basically I'm living in Dune. Like we're in our up-teen drought of whenever. So like I think definitely that concept of resources and this protection of them is really resonant for today. So I'm not mad they're making these movies. I'm glad they are, but also, yeah, we'll see how they go. Because I agree with your criticisms. I mean, Timothy just maybe broods in sand. That's his character arc. He goes from water to sand. So, yeah, we'll see where everyone goes. And I guess Zendaya goes from being a dream to reality. So, I mean, that's her character arc for this first movie. So, yeah. We'll see where they end up. But yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go. I was just going to say I agree with you. So this film is very limited in terms of the part oneness. There's not a lot that you can do in developing the characters because we haven't gotten to any sort of change in the characters yet, right? Because we're still sort of in the first part one of the film. So it's kind of hard to think of it as its own unique movie from beginning, middle to end, because it's not designed to be that way, which is funny considering that the second film wasn't greenlighted yet. It's so fascinating that they would take such a big risk on that.
Well, two things. As someone who moved from New York to Oregon, which is now starting to experience droughts, moving to the West Coast will certainly, I've never been so excited to see rains come until I moved here. Let's just put it that way from our summer droughts. So I completely agree with you there that maybe we'll all end up being Timothy Chalamet brooding in sand. And that's really what this is all about. To your point, Anthony, I was just thinking, we might all get let down because one of the things that I liked about Dune as a kid when I read it, and that might be a problem with it in general, is this is a story of epic proportions where very much the character aspect, I think, sometimes gets undercut, especially in the early books, by just this gigantic, massive notion that there's an entire world and that world is the subject of these global powers, right? That's why I do think it's a story of colonialism in that the people are just sort of taken out of it instead of just resources and land and all that sort of stuff. And so I don't remember the characters popping for me by the end. So that'll be a challenge in part two, I think, is to try to make these characters more human or more Atreidian and more Fremini. I'm trying to get to what they are on their planets, but I can't quite get it.
Yeah, and sort of add to it, add to the idea how sort of it says something about our current condition, the idea that this planet is being sort of mined for its goods to the detriment to the people who live there, right? So they talk about how the place could have been a paradise if you just would have stopped. But the spice is so valuable that it needs to be the way it is, and it's sort of affecting the indigenous population. Well, I mean, come on, it's almost, I mean, it's kind of on the nose there, a little too on the nose there, right?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, but fantastic. So we're at Michael. What's your last one? What do you got for us?
My last one is kind of a two-parter. Somewhat jokingly, just Oscar Isaac's body. Great, such a DILF. What the best thing about that movie. And then second two, the sandworms I thought were awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't mention
But the only thing is, like, I remember questioning when I like left the theater if like worms eat like what they eat, because it seems like always like sandworms, like these big worms are like carnivorous and they need like meat. But I'm like, do worms actually eat meat? What's their whole deal? But yeah, I just love a good worm though, like a good monster that like lurks down below, very Jaws like. I'm a fan of. So I want to see more sandworms. That's pretty much what I want. So I was not disappointed this time, but yeah, more worms. And I mean, I can't get more Oscar Isaac, but R.I.P. Leto. But yeah, like the worms were great. I think I also agree with you guys where like the technology was just like really cool. Like just everything about this film was just like cool to watch. Like it felt like I remember seeing someone on TikTok saying like watching Dune made them feel like they should know French. Like it was a very like, very like fun, but somewhat pretentious, but like beautiful, like sci-fi film that like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like when the last like big sci-fi happened besides like, I mean, Star Wars, but even those were yeah, I'm trying to think of when we had like a last like big huge sci-fi, which I'm a fan of. So I mean, this is like great and I'm excited for more. And I'll probably just go watch the David Lynch film right after we're done talking. But also I was gonna ask Max if like you could send us where you saw the documentary that you're talking about. I would love to watch that too. So yeah.
Unfortunately, you can only buy it from a variety of streaming services. So either Google Play or Amazon or Vudu or what have you. But I will happily send over the name if nothing else, because it is also done by, it was completely financed by French people. So it also has its own version of that French pretension that you're mentioning.
Yes. Those darn French Canadians. Like
it does make you wonder, because to add to your point here, Michael, the worms are attracted to movement. So in order to be attracted to movement, there has to be some sort of benefit to attacking whatever is making sound. Therefore, like they're predators. Like they need to eat like living beings to survive. Because why would you go after something if it's just making noise, right? You would want to eat it, right? But then I'm thinking to myself, the mining vehicle, that can't be good for the worm, right? That's just got to be like that can't be
constant headache.
Does it just poop it out? Like what? Like what's like it can't digest that, right? I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm so curious about these sandworms like eating habits and like their life cycles. I don't know if the book goes into this. If it does, I might have to read the book. But like, do they eat other sandworms? Like what is like sustaining them on this planet besides like the Fremen and whoever's colonizing them at the time? And like, maybe those little rats that were like traveling around, like, like how were they? Because they're huge, like they're like meters long, whatever that is in feet, because we're also not French Canadian.
Yes.
But like, but yeah, like they're just like, I don't know, they're just so fast. I think maybe because it's like October, so like horror, like this is like when I get the most wanting to watch horror. So like a good monster creature feature has been like on my mind. So I think these sandworms, I'm just fascinated by how they function, like as like these kind of like I'm trying to think of how we can put them, because if like the people who come are the colonizers, like what would be, I guess that'd be more of like the nature that you have to like succumb to and just live with, because eventually they ride them, which is like cool. So it's like, how does that come to be? Like, I'm so excited for more of these sandworms that hopefully, because I know Paul eventually has to ride one. Like that's how he like becomes part of like this like tribe, is like that's like your final step into manhood, is like you ride one of these things. So
Yes.
I might just have to read Dune now. Thanks, Max. Like, you've convinced me. I might just have to do it. Like, so
you might have 2 or 3 years to read it. before the
You
next
have
one comes
plenty of
out.
time.
Yeah.
forever.
I mean, it's funny. Like afterwards, or even during the movie, I was trying to remember all the worms. So like, I had a very similar feeling. I was like, oh yeah, there were worms in Beetlejuice. There's that moment in Futurama where Al Gore says, "I have ridden the mighty moonworm," which I never thought of, but is probably a reference to Dune. Because that is the same thing. First Emperor of the Moon, Al Gore. So I started getting all these like sort of worm moments in my head, but I don't know. I mean, like it's weird. Like, on the one hand, I think worms are kind of the apex predator of Arrakis, and then on the other hand, without sort of like spoiling too much, it's everything about that planet works in symbiosis, and that's one of the beautiful metaphors of that, is that, again, rather than having a technology imposed upon it, Arrakis does all these things. Nature has this symbiotic relationship with the people and with the creatures and things like that. So I think you definitely get into how they sustain themselves in one form or another if you dive into the books.
Fantastic!
Yeah.
Well, something to look forward to. A little bit of worm knowledge.
Yeah, a little bit of it. I'm not saying you get everything, but you get a sense of that symbiosis, if nothing else.
All right. Well, that concludes our discussion on Dune. Max, did you want to add anything? Did we leave anything out?
Oh, I don't think so. Yeah, there's a lot of Dunes. So none of us watched the sci-fi miniseries from 2000. We can always dive into that. Nice 3.5 4-hour miniseries. So it's out there. Just another Dune. I think Leto is played by Hurt. I don't know. That I'll leave it there rather than going on another rant.
Well, fantastic, excellent. So, Mychal, if you just get ready for problematic representation
Part 2
in the 1984 Dune film, just get ready for that, because that's I remember I saw that when I was a kid. So there's a particular scene that I'm referencing where what the Baron does to somebody, and when I watched it as a kid, I thought to myself, what's happening? But I've looked into this, and apparently, so 1984 is it's sort of like the apex of sort of like the AIDS epidemic as well. So there's a lot of sort of like that social anxiety going on as well. So some people have made comments about how like that is sort of plays into the representation of sexuality, particularly when it comes to the Baron and how he treats his subjects. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's I completely agree with you about it being one of the it makes you cringe in so many ways. Let's just put it that way.
I mean, don't threaten me with a good critical time. I'm excited now. You guys have made me more want to watch it. It wouldn't be a David Lynch film if it weren't somewhat problematic. So I mean, like,
Before we end the show, Acid, do we have any comments, or are we going to be disappointed by asking that?
You might be a little disappointed by asking that. I can make up some comments. I can't. I got nothing.
Well, that concludes our show. Thank you everyone for watching. Of course, once again, you can check us out on YouTube and Twitch, where we stream, and you can watch the videos later. And then you can just check us out in podcast form as well on wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple. For Dr. Maxwell Foxman, for Mychal, and for our producer, Acidtrain, I'm Anthony Denar. Goodbye, everybody.